Hi, I'm David Goforth with Cooperative Extension Successful Gardener. Extension has a recommended way of growing a lawn. If you're interested in the recommended way, I would suggest you go on the internet and pull this booklet down right here. It's called Carolina Lawns. It'll give you all the details on establishing a lawn. And then if you're interested in tall fescue, you can pull down a tall fescue maintenance calendar. Go to our NC State website and search statewide for a tall fescue maintenance calendar, and that will give you the recommended way of growing a lawn. Today I'm going to talk about something that makes a lot of common sense to me, and that's my way of growing a lawn. I chose this area right here for a couple of reasons. First of all, it looks pretty good. All my lawn doesn't look quite this well. But the other thing is, this is the exact area we were taking a picture in 2 years ago in 2007 during the drought. And since that time, I've done nothing but mow this, and you can see that it's come back fairly well right here. The first thing I would suggest that you do is determine your priorities. What are you growing a lawn for? When I ask people that, people call me about a pesticide question, and I say, why? Why do you want to do this? And they mess around, they say they want to grow a tall fescue lawn. I say, why do you want to grow a tall fescue lawn? And they have a hard time telling me exactly why they want to grow a lawn. I can tell you why I want to grow a lawn. First of all, I want a place to get out here and play, to chase the dogs, for the dogs to run around, kids to play, things like that. I want a place out here to control erosion and for beauty. I want something that looks beautiful. And for those things, I don't necessarily have to have pesticides. I don't necessarily have to have a lot of fertilizer. And I'll explain those things as we go along. So here's sort of the principles I have. I take this area that I want to control erosion, that I want to play on, that I want to look good. I also want it to produce for me, to be useful, to produce food for myself and for wildlife. One of the plants that I'll have out here in my lawn is a violet. Violets are edible. I will use them on salads. There's other edible plants out here, chickweed, I'll occasionally use that in salad, things like that. There's other plants that I find useful for bees, that'll provide pollen for bees, and so I want those plants in my lawn. There's other plants that will provide nutrition. I'll show you one here in just a minute, is the clover. So there's a lot of plants that I have out here in my lawn besides tall fescue. And if I was to apply herbicides, for example, I wouldn't have those particular plants. So the first principle is that my lawn is another additional place to provide food and shelter for humans and wildlife. The other thing that I want my lawn to do is to produce its own nutrition. This is a mature lawn, and you can't do this in a lawn that you're just getting started. In a lawn you're just getting started, you have to add some nitrogen, you have to add some phosphorus, you have to add some potassium if those things are not available, and normally they're not. But when you get to this point, let's take and look at each of these individually. The way this lawn gets nitrogen, it'll lose some nitrogen through leaching and through volatilization, different things, but the way it gets nitrogen is through this plant right here. This is a clover, and if you don't spray herbicides, you'll get clover in here. And clover is useful for a couple of reasons. Number one, I like to get out here with my wife and we'll search for four-leaf clovers. Some days we may find 10, 15 four-leaf clovers out here. But the other thing the clover does for me is it takes nitrogen from the air and it puts it into the soil. So instead of going and buying nitrogen at the store, I'm producing my own nitrogen right out here in the lawn. And you'll see in some areas where I need more nitrogen, you'll wind up with more clover, and that's fine. In fact, I will sometimes take the nitrogen that's fixed here and I'll take it and I'll put it in the lawn. And I'll put it in my garden rather. I'll take the nitrogen from the lawn and put it in my garden, as opposed to people that are buying nitrogen at the store and putting it on their lawns. Now, the other things that we need, or the major nutrients that we need, is the second number on the fertilizer bag, which is phosphorus. That's 24 on this particular bag right here. Phosphorus will stay in place. Once you get enough phosphorus on the soil, it will stay here. And when I mow, I leave the clippings here, and that phosphorus just cycles here. As long as this soil doesn't wash away, I'll have plenty of phosphorus here. So I don't have to come out here every year and add phosphorus. The last number on the fertilizer bag is potassium. Potassium's a little bit more mobile than that, but for the most part, the potassium will stay around, particularly if I leave the clippings here. The clippings contain potassium, and the potassium just cycles right here. This particular lawn right here, I know for a fact that no fertilizer has been on this lawn for the last 18 years. And probably for a number of years before that, other than what the clover has pulled out of the air and put into the lawn. So that's one thing that I want out of a lawn. I want the lawn to produce its own fertility. Another thing that I want the lawn to do is to reseed itself. Again, if you remember this patch right here, we took a picture of it in 2007, and it looked pretty rough. During the drought year, it had gotten down. There was a number of plants that had died in this particular area right here. But you can see some of them come back and others have seeded in. And so this lawn has the ability to renovate itself. Now again, a young lawn will not have that. And a lawn has to build up a lot of weed seeds and different seeds in the soil bank, we call it, where it can sprout when it needs to. And some of these have sprouted and whatever, and you've given me this lawn that I've got right here. Now, the other thing I want on a lawn is I want some kind of weed control without herbicides. I've actually seen products that were like $50. People were buying $50 for a small lawn. This lawn here, I would have probably had to buy 10 of those bags to cover this entire lawn right here. So obviously I need another way. I'm not going to spend that kind of money on a lawn. So in this case right here, what I have is the grass is mowed fairly high. If you're mowing it at, this is about 4 inches high. This is time to be mowed again right in here. We'll mow this and drop it down maybe to about 4 inches of high. And you'll see that is very competitive, and it will keep out a number of different plants. But again, what is a weed? A weed is a plant struggling with an unhappy human. You know, if I'm happy to have this plant here, then that's fine. And I do want some of these plants again for pollen for my bees, for nectar for my bees, for food for myself, medicine for myself. There's all kinds of different uses for these plants that I have here. So just by, again, mowing at about the 3-inch level, that'll keep things down like the young trees and stuff that would sprout out here, and will keep it pretty good. It also, you don't see any crabgrass here. We'd probably have to search pretty hard to find crabgrass in my lawn. I think I probably could eventually find it here or there, but again, you won't find it where I've got this thick of a lawn that's mowed at this height right here. So again, the plants that you have out here, if you will mow it at a tall fescue, mow it at about 3.5 inches, you will take a lot of these plants out of the equation, and then you can live with the rest of them. The other thing I want to mention is irrigation. Again, in 2007, this particular patch went for 12 weeks without water, and it hadn't had water since, but it's come back fairly well. I don't think it's really environmentally sound for us to store water, transport water, pump water, treat water, and then throw it back out on our lawns, on an established lawn. I just do not think that's necessary. Again, 12 weeks without water, without a drop of water, was a fairly bad roll of the dice, and I don't think we'll get a lot worse than that. So again, just sort of summarize here, what I've got my lawn doing is it will renovate itself, it will feed itself, it will maintain its fertility, it will provide plants that are useful for pollen for the bees, useful for myself, both edible and medicine, and it will control erosion and will sort of protect itself here. Again, the only management I'll do on this lawn now is I'll mow it. If you've got a young lawn, you're going to have to do some different things. You're going to have to add some lime until you get the pH right. Once the pH is right, it will sort of maintain itself for a long time. You've got to add some phosphorus till you get the phosphorus levels right. Once you get the phosphorus levels right, it will maintain itself for a long time. You may have to add grass seed to begin with. Clover seed, I've planted clover. A lot of times that'll come in fairly naturally on its own. I've also planted some other plants in lawns besides grass for ornamental purposes. I've planted crocuses in lawns, I've planted daffodils in lawns, things like that. But you do not have to go out here. It doesn't make sense to me to go out here and spend the kind of money some people are spending on lawns. Again, we do have the recommended ways. If you want to do that, you can go on the internet and pull that down. But I would encourage you to think about what you're doing, make some priorities, and use some common sense. If you've got any questions about lawns, give me a call at the office. And until next time, plan and plant for a better world.